All right, let's dive into some of history's most absolutely wild moments of, well, chaos. We are talking about full-on, city-burning riots that didn't start because of some grand revolution. Nope, they exploded over some of the most petty, bizarre, and just plain ridiculous things you can imagine. Let's get into it.
So, I've got a question for you. What in the world could possibly connect angry sports fans, circus clowns, and a broken Pepsi machine? Well, the answer takes us on this incredible trip through history. And it shows us that sometimes the line between total order and absolute mayhem is way thinner and a whole lot weirder than you'd ever think.
So let's kick things off in a place we can all understand, the world of sports. You know, the passion, the rivalry, it's all part of the fun, right? But as we're about to see, when you mix that intense energy with some simmering social tension, the game has a way of spilling out of the stadium and, setting the whole city on fire.
Okay, we're going way back to 532 AD, Constantinople. The absolute biggest thing to do for fun was to go to the hippodrome and watch the chariot races. But this wasn't just about sports. It was all about politics. You were either a fan of the Greens, the team of the common folk, or you backed the Blues, who were the team of the rich and powerful. Seriously, think of it like a class war, but with horses.
And this is where the story takes a crazy turn. These two groups who hated each other suddenly found an enemy they could hate together. See, after a small riot, a green and a blue were arrested and sentenced to be hanged, but the execution got botched. So the crowd, both greens and blues, started begging Emperor Justinian I for mercy. He just blew them off. Big mistake. The two factions united, and they started chanting Nika, which means win or conquer, not at the racers, but right in the emperor's face.
The chant worked. The riot exploded. For a whole week, half the city was in flames. Justinian was absolutely terrified and was literally packing his bags to flee. But then his wife, Empress Theodora, stepped up. She gave him this unbelievable speech, basically saying, "Stop being a coward and handle this." She convinced him that it was far better to die in power than to live the rest of his life as a runaway.
And, well, he handled it, but in the most horrific way possible. Justinian told the rioters to gather in the hippodrome for peaceful negotiations. Of course, it was a trap. He locked the gates and sent his soldiers in. They massacred nearly 30,000 people. 30,000, all unarmed. And just like that, the riot was over and his power was secure, built on pure terror. A truly dark ending that all started at a chariot race.
Okay, let's jump forward about, 1,400 years to something a little more relatable, but just as chaotic. Cleveland, Ohio, 1974. The Cleveland Indians baseball team decides to run a promotion. The idea was beautiful in its simplicity and its stupidity. Sell cups of beer, which normally cost 65 cents, for just a dime, 10 cents. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, as you might guess, the promotion was a huge hit, maybe too huge. The attendance more than doubled. Over 25,000 fans poured into the stadium, ready to get their 10-cent beer. Now, they said there was a 6-cup limit per purchase, but there was no limit on the number of purchases. So the stadium was just full of thousands and thousands of people getting extremely drunk for extremely cheap. The math wasn't hard to do on this one.
So, a riot fueled by cheap beer at a baseball game, that almost makes a weird kind of sense, right? But trust me, we are just getting started. We're about to leave the world of understandable chaos and head straight into the territory of the truly, deeply bizarre.
All right, now we're going to look at riots that were sparked by, let's just call them unique cultural situations. We're talking about conflicts that sound like the setup to a bad joke, except the punchline was anything but funny. And first up, get ready for this. A literal showdown between circus clowns and firefighters.
You heard that correctly. Toronto, 1855. A traveling circus rolls into town. After the show, a few of the clowns head over to a local brothel, which, as it turns out, was the go-to spot for the town's volunteer fighter fighters. A fight breaks out over who gets the ladies' attention, and the clowns completely beat up the fighter fighters. I mean, they won the fight. Handily.
As you can imagine, the firefighters, who were all part of this powerful, kind of shady local group called the Orange Order, did not take being beaten up by clowns very well. The next day, they decided to get some revenge. They organized a mob, marched over to the circus, and set it on fire. And when the fire department was called, they showed up and joined the mob instead of putting out the fire. The police, also in on it, did basically nothing. The whole affair just exposed this deep rot of corruption in the city, all because a few clowns won a brawl.
Okay, From clowns, we go to eels. I need to introduce you to a game called Drunken. It was this very strange but very popular game in the Netherlands back in the 1800s. Basically, you get a live eel, cover it in slime to make it extra slippery, and hang it from a rope stretched over a canal. Then people in boats try to grab it and pull it down as they float underneath. Yeah, it was eventually banned for being, incredibly cruel to eels.
So fast forward to 1886. In this really poor neighborhood in Amsterdam, a crowd gathers to play an illegal game of eel-pulling. A police officer sees what's happening, comes over, and just cuts the rope. For the people there, this wasn't just about stopping a game. It was a symbol of the authorities cracking down on one of their few traditions. So they rioted, and it escalated so fast that the army had to be called in. They actually opened fire on the crowd, killing 26 people, all because of a slippery eel on a rope.
All right, for our last section, we're looking at triggers that might actually hit a little closer to home. Good old-fashioned economic anxiety and corporate greed. These are stories about what happens when people feel like the system is cheating them, whether that system is selling cheese or soda pop. Okay, picture this. It's 1766 in Nottingham, England. Times are tough. There's a food shortage. People are heading to the annual town fair, hoping to buy cheese to last them through the winter. But when they get there, the prices are insane. Why? Because a handful of wealthy merchants had bought up all the local cheese, what we would call scalping today, with a plan to ship it to other cities and sell it for a fortune, leaving the local folks high and dry.
People were, to put it mildly, not happy. They rioted, they went after the merchants, busted up their shops, and took back the cheese. And this is my favorite part of the story. They weren't just looting for themselves. Eyewitnesses said they saw people rolling these huge, heavy wheels of cheese down the streets, just giving it away to anyone who needed it. It wasn't a riot about theft. It was a riot about fairness.
And now, for our grand finale, we land in 1992. Pepsi kicks off this massive bottle cap contest in the Philippines. The grand prize? 1 million pesos. I mean, truly life-changing money for most people there. The whole country was obsessed with it. It was a brilliant promotion, right up until the very last day. Because that's when a computer glitch caused the winning number, 349, to be printed on 800,000 bottle caps instead of just, 1 or 2.
Suddenly, Pepsi was in an absolutely impossible position. Their entire prize budget for the contest was $2 million. To pay out all 800,000 so-called winners, that would have cost them $32 billion. With a B. That was more than the entire company was worth, so they couldn't pay. They retracted the number and offered a measly consolation prize instead. And for the hundreds of thousands of people who thought they had just become millionaires, it felt like the ultimate betrayal.
So when you look at all of these stories together, chariot races, clowns, cheese, bottle caps, you start to see a pattern, right? The trigger is almost never the real reason. It's just the spark that lights a fuse that was already there. The real fuel is always something deeper. This powerful feeling of being ignored, of being treated unfairly by the people in charge. It's how one person's act of defiance can suddenly unite a crowd, turning them into a mob with a single, simple goal.
From ancient rivalries to modern marketing blunders, all these stories just go to show how unbelievably fragile the order we take for granted really is. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our world today, with all its own tensions and frustrations, what's our breaking point? What's the seemingly trivial thing that could one day push everything over the edge? What's our eel-pulling contest? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for watching.